HOA police, come outside. Imagine waking up on a quiet Saturday morning thinking you finally earned some peace, only to have two men showing up at your door with fake badges and in fake uniforms, pretending to be cops, claiming they're here to arrest you. That's what happened to Elias Vance, a black man who just finished a 6-week undercover mission and wanted one quiet morning to breathe. But the so-called Community Safety Patrol wasn't real police. It was a stunt ordered by Cynthia Sterling, a ruthless HOA president who thought she could scare him into submission. What she didn't know was that Elias wasn't some ordinary homeowner, and when this imposter tried to arrest him at his own house, she ended up learning what happens when fake authority meets the real law. It was a slow Saturday morning, the kind that promised peace for once. Inside his kitchen, Elias Vance, a black federal officer, stood barefoot on the tile floor, still wearing his old flannel pajamas and the faded socks his daughter had given him years ago. Back the blue stitched in bold blue letters across the toes. He never wore them to work, only at home, only when no one was watching. For the first time in weeks, Elias allowed himself to breathe. 6 relentless weeks of undercover work, chasing cartel runners through sewers and busted safe houses, had left his mind heavy. 4 colleagues gone in the last year, too many ghosts for one man to carry. Silence had become his only comfort. Then, out of nowhere, came the sound. Ding dong. The bell cut through the calm like an alarm. Elias's eyes opened, jaw tightening. No one rang his doorbell. Not on a Saturday, not without calling first. Before he could take a step, a man's voice barked from outside, loud, rehearsed, trying too hard. Resident, step outside immediately. He didn't move. Instead, he glanced down the hallway toward the door, expression unreadable. Setting the portafilter aside, he took a slow sip of coffee, rolled his neck once to the left, once to the right, then walked toward the front entry. Through the peephole, he saw them, 2 men in black windbreakers that read, Community Safety Patrol across the back. Mid-30s, maybe early 40s. One had a plastic badge clipped to his belt, the kind you'd print at an office supply store. The other had zip-tie cuffs hanging from his waistband like trophies. Both wore sunglasses, even though the sun hadn't fully touched the street yet. Elias opened the door just a few inches, enough to speak, but not enough to show much of himself. "Can I help you?" he asked. The man on the left stepped forward like he'd been waiting for that line. "Sir, we've received multiple complaints. Yard debris, unauthorized flag display, and reported verbal aggression toward an HOA board member. You need to come outside." Elias blinked slowly. The stench of cheap cologne and energy drink hit him. These men weren't cops, not even close. "Which department are you with?" he asked. Silence. Then the answer, "That's not relevant. What would you do if 2 strangers showed up at your door pretending to be law enforcement?" Before we go further, what city or country are you watching from right now? Drop it in the comments. We love seeing where our viewers are tuning in from. And if you believe real authority should never be faked, smash that like button and subscribe to Karen Conflict for stories that remind people what happens when imposters meet the real thing. He studied their badges. Cheap laminate, clip art, eagle. No numbers, no names. His tone dropped, steady as stone. "You're aware impersonating an officer is a felony, right?" The taller one's jaw locked. The shorter one's hand twitched toward his cuffs. Elias didn't move. His eyes narrowed. "Let me guess," he said quietly. "Cynthia Sterling sent you." Elias's tone was so calm it cut deeper than a shout. The 2 men exchanged uneasy glances. The taller one's throat worked, but no words came out. The shorter man tried to steady himself, gripping his fake badge like it meant something. Elias held their eyes for a moment, then quietly shut the door. On the other side of the hedge, not 20 feet away, crouched Cynthia Sterling herself, the woman behind the curtain. 59, bone thin, hair sprayed into a helmet, lipstick too red for mourning. Her pressed beige pantsuit matched the pale siding of her house so perfectly, she almost blended into it. Almost, she wasn't crouching to hide. She was crouching to watch. That was what she did best. Surveillance disguised as civic duty. President of the HOA, head of Neighborhood Watch, self-appointed guardian of property perfection. Her vendetta against Elias Vance, the new black homeowner, began the day he refused to remove his thin blue line flag from the porch. She'd called it divisive, political, non-compliant. But it wasn't politics she hated. It was resistance. Elias didn't attend her meetings. He didn't answer her letters. He didn't fear her clipboard. That alone made him a threat. Now crouched behind his hedge with an off-brand walkie-talkie and a spiral notebook of invented violations. She pressed the talk button like it was a trigger. "Go ahead and enter," she hissed. "He'll fold once you pressure him." He's not who he pretends to be. Inside, Elias watched her every move through the doorbell cam feed on his phone. Clear video, clear audio, time-stamped evidence. He turned the volume up so the two men on the porch could hear her voice for themselves. "Go in." Cynthia's voice crackled through the speaker. He's bluffing. Both imposters froze. Panic flickered where confidence had lived seconds ago. Elias stepped into the doorway again, still in his sweatpants and t-shirt. His posture alone changed the air. "Identify yourselves," he said evenly. Neither spoke. "We don't need to," one finally muttered. "We're here under an active HOA directive." Elias's head tilted. "Then show it." Silence. They had nothing. "You're standing on a federal officer's porch," he said, voice like concrete. "Wearing fake badges, taking orders from a woman hiding in my hedges." Their bravado cracked. Elias gave a faint, humorless nod. "Thought so." Then he stepped back inside, closing the door with a soft click that felt like thunder. Outside, Cynthia's voice trembled through the radio. "What's taken so long? Go in." But for the first time, no one moved. Inside, Elias didn't rush. He'd learned long ago that silence could be louder than any threat. The fake cops were still outside on his porch, fidgeting under the weight of their own nerves, while he moved through the hallway with quiet, methodical focus. He opened the closet beside the stairs. Everything inside was exactly where it always was. His duty belt, his ballistic vest, the radio badge, and Glock holstered clean. For weeks, those items had sat untouched, waiting. Now, with practiced precision, Elias began to gear up. The sound of each buckle snapping into place filled the room with steady rhythm. No rush, no noise, just routine. By the time he stood upright, the transformation was complete. Gone was the quiet black man in a t-shirt and sweatpants. What remained was Lieutenant Elias Vance, Federal Narcotics Division, a man whose authority didn't come from shouting, but from training, time, and truth. Outside, the imposters were losing their composure. One kept glancing at the hedge where Cynthia Sterling was still hiding, whispering frantic instructions into her walkie-talkie. Her tone had shifted from command to desperation. She'd lost control of the script, and she knew it. Then the door opened again. Elias stepped out slowly, the morning light, catching the polished badge on his chest. His expression didn't change. His voice carried enough weight to silence everything around them. "You two are under arrest," he said evenly. "Impersonating law enforcement and attempting unlawful entry." The shorter man's mouth fell open. "Wait, this was just a safety check. HOA told us to." Elias cut him off with a single look. "Then tell me who in the HOA authorized you to threaten a federal officer in his own home?" The question hung heavy. No answer came. He reached for his radio and spoke clearly, calm as ever. "Dispatch, Lieutenant Vance reporting 2 suspects on site, impersonation and attempted unlawful entry." Within minutes, the distant hum of engines became sirens. Red and blue lights washed across Oak Ridge Estates, painting the manicured lawns in streaks of judgment. Cynthia ducked lower behind the hedge, but it was useless. Elias turned his head slightly. "You might as well come out, Cynthia. You're already on camera. I've got your voice and your face." The hedge rustled. Slowly, trembling, Cynthia stood, clipboard clutched to her chest. "I didn't know," she whispered. Elise's eyes stayed locked on hers. His tone was cold, final. "You didn't care." The officers moved in. 3 suspects, fake badges, zip cuffs, and windbreakers, all bagged as evidence. The woman who'd ruled her neighborhood through fear now stood under the lights of real authority. And for once, she had nothing left to say. By Monday morning, the arrests were official. Cynthia Sterling and her 2 hired imposters now faced a list of felony charges: impersonating law enforcement, attempted unlawful entry, and issuing threats against a federal officer. The story spread fast through Oak Ridge Estates. Some residents were stunned. Most were quietly relieved. For years, Cynthia had ruled the subdivision like a petty dictator, handing out fines, delivering threats, and turning minor complaints into public humiliations. She'd forced one family to take down a child's swing set for violating property symmetry, and made an elderly man tear out rose bushes that had been there for decades. People had stopped inviting her to gatherings out of fear she'd report them. But now her power had collapsed. When police led her out of her home in cuffs, the clipboard she never went anywhere without was bagged as evidence, along with 2 imitation badges and a pair of plastic cuffs. For the first time, Cynthia wasn't in charge. She was the defendant. Back at his office, Elias Vance sat behind his desk, finishing paperwork while the precinct buzzed quietly around him. His colleague, Detective Miller, leaned against the doorframe, holding up his phone with a grin. "Fox wants a statement," he said. "They're calling it the HOA sting. You could do an interview. This is front-page stuff." Elias didn't look up. He just kept typing. "Let the indictments talk," he said. He wasn't after headlines. He was after order, the kind Cynthia had destroyed. In court, Cynthia Sterling tried to play the victim. Dressed in a beige cardigan and a mask of humility, she told the judge she was just a stressed volunteer who wanted to keep the neighborhood safe. Her voice trembled, her words carefully chosen to sound harmless. But that illusion shattered when the prosecutor pressed a key on his laptop. The courtroom filled with her own voice, recorded straight from Elias Vance's doorbell camera. "Go ahead and enter. He'll confess. He's not who he pretends to be." The room went still. Every juror froze. "You didn't know he was a federal officer?" the prosecutor asked. Cynthia looked down. "We thought he was unemployed. He never came to HOA meetings. He flew that police flag. It was political." "The flag?" the prosecutor repeated. "That's your justification." The judge leaned forward, tone heavy with disbelief. "You hired men with fake badges and plastic cuffs to intimidate a homeowner who happened to be a federal officer because you didn't like his flag or his lawn." The gavel struck once. 18 months in state custody for all 3 defendants. The HOA was placed under federal oversight for 2 years. For the first time in decades, real accountability had landed on their street. The next HOA meeting wasn't held in a lounge or clubhouse. It was in a church basement under court supervision. No snacks, no speeches, no false authority. Every bylaw was rewritten, stripped of its power to abuse. No more subcommittees, no more community patrols. Only verified procedures overseen by real officers. If you believe the law should never be worn like a costume, hit that like button and subscribe to Care and Conflict. Because the HOA rewrote every rule after learning one simple truth: you don't fake authority at a real cop's house.